Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Marianne Pinkston, and welcome to The Better Life with Dr. Pinkston. I'm really excited about this show today because not only are we going to discuss a topic that I think is difficult, it's difficult for doctors, it's difficult for patients, it's just difficult, and it's about death and grieving, but very important. And I think a lot of medical providers leave this portion out because it can be very uncomfortable because too providers don't often have enough time to really delve in deep. And so I'm happy to present someone who is an authority in this area. He's going to tell us our story here in a moment, Thomas Attig. So I am really happy to have you on today. Thank you so much. And let me say in the beginning, you've got a book and you've actually got two books. So we're going to talk about both. I think one is the one on the top of the list today, and then one that is near and dear to your heart that you self-published, which I think is also very interesting. Seeking Wisdom in Death's Shadow. What a beautiful title. And then your self-published Catching Your Breath in Grief. Both wonderful topics. Thank you, Tom, for being on this morning. It's lovely to have you.
It's great to be here. Thank you for that extra plug. They're both going to be available on Amazon. That'll be the best places to find them.
Good. And by the way, we have a little QR for those of you who are, we have iTunes and Spotify and iHeart Radio and all. For those of you who are on YouTube, we have up in the corner a QR code that makes it easily accessible. So if you would like to take a look and there's a QR code, hit that. But also it'll be on the website. So I'll make sure that we have links to go and grab your book. And thank you. So, always a good place to start is with your story. How did you come to be interested in this topic and write about it?
This is a terribly long story. I'll try to be concise.
No problem.
I was telling you before we went on the air, when I was just a little kid, I had a brother and a mother and father. We were a small unit, but I belonged in two large families. My mother was one of 9, and my father was one of 10. They were 18 years apart, so there were about 30 aunts and uncles in my life and a comparable number of cousins. The entire family on my mother's side lived in the Chicago area, and we lived in the suburbs. So most of our family social life was with that large family. But my father's family was spread all over the Midwest, and some went out to California. We lived in the suburbs of Chicago. When I was growing up, when a family member would die, inevitably someone would write a letter or two just announcing to the larger family what had happened. And it turned out unusually, I didn't know it was unusual at the time. I thought it was happening in every family of all my friends. When someone would die in the family, a letter would be written and it would come to the house, and my mother would recognize what was in it, and she would open the letter and she'd gather the three of us, my older brother, me, and my dad, together, and she'd read the letter out loud. Wow. So by the time I was a teenager, say, I probably heard 15 or 20 of those letters read out loud.
Wow.
When someone in her family became ill and went to the hospital, or my dad's family, if they happened to live close, we would go and visit. She would take me to visit for an entire afternoon or an entire morning. So people dying and the stories of their dying were just part of my growing up. It was sort of like the furniture. I remember I talked to my editor for the first book I wrote long ago in the 1990s, and I told her about some of these things, and she said, "We never talked about death and dying in my life. I never heard a story like you heard regularly." So I said, "Yeah, all right." So there was that kind of privileged background.
Yes.
I wanted to be a teacher because I love my teachers. And my brother became a teacher. He was 9 years older than me, so he was like a third parent, and the most effective of the three. The others were working hard, One had graduated eighth grade. One had graduated high school. Generationally in my family, by the time we got to my generation, we all went to college.
Yeah.
And some of us became doctors like you, and some became professors, and some went off to be engineers and scientists and teachers in their own right. Anyway, when I went through school, I was really good at math. They have standardized tests. I got perfect scores on those tests, including the advanced tests. All right.
Nice.
So I thought, I got to do math when I go off to college, and I want to be a teacher. I was invited to come to certain kinds of programs that would feature engineering, and I could never think of myself as an engineer. So I'm going to teach math. And the teacher I loved the most in high school was my math teacher. God, he was good and a lovely man. I went off to the university, and my first term there in advanced courses I was ready for, I could barely understand the teachers. Didn't look like all that interesting a profession. I asked myself, are you going to be a university professor? Not in math. Some of what they're doing is so bizarre. I can't even grasp it. I'm probably a human calculator, so that's what I'm good at. But I also thought, do I really want to be a teacher who every year tries to teach seniors in high school trigonometry when they don't want to learn it? And I'll be going over the same set of questions and challenges for 40 or 50 years of my life.
Over and over.
It just didn't seem right. And my brother was a history teacher, so I thought, geez, maybe the humanities. So my sophomore year, I signed up for history, philosophy, and literature. And I said, I'll take a whole year, and what I like the best, and hopefully do the best in, I'll make that my major. Because I want to teach, but I want to talk intelligently with people who are trying to understand things that are hard to understand.
Nice.
And that can vary from term to term, class to class. It's just more deeply human. It's like the stuff I've been listening to in my large family for years. And I've always wanted to be with my friends and have conversations as opposed to running around a track or beating my head against a wall playing football that I have no qualifications for, and so on. I always wanted to hear good conversations, participate in good conversations, initiate good conversation. And I studied, and it turned out philosophy was the thing for me. And in particular, existentialism, that I understand as a philosophy that is working very hard to appreciate how a finite, limited being like we human beings are can find a way to living a meaningful life with integrity.
Well said.
And phenomenology sounds all kinds of technical and kind of bizarre, but what it really is, it's a philosophy that enables you to learn as much as you possibly can from understanding of experiences. In particular, they help you to describe and interpret experiences well.
Yes.
I thought, okay, this is good. I go off to graduate school, and I have nothing in mind about grief and loss and death and dying, but I've got this thirst for existential phenomenology. My second year there, my father died, and I had to drive 300 miles to get to his funeral, and experience that, and driving back with a fellow graduate student who kind of came along with me for that experience. I'm thinking, when I get back to St. Louis, where I went to graduate school, I'd really like to find a wise person to sit down and talk about my father for a while and his life. And I was wondering about, what did his 73 years mean to him? What did my 23 years with him mean to me and with him?
Sure.
And as I reviewed the faculty, I thought, maybe I don't know them well enough, so I may be discounting them, but I wasn't comfortable with the idea of approaching any of them with what was on my mind. I didn't
Sure.
feel desperate. I didn't feel like I was falling apart or whatever, but I really wanted a good conversation to help me sort things out better,
Sure.
which I think is what a lot of grieving people want and don't know where to
Absolutely.
turn.
Absolutely.
And I didn't approach anybody. But on the way down to St. Louis, I vowed I want to be a philosopher who is the kind of philosopher that people want to come and talk with.
Nice.
I want to be comfortable. I want to be soothing, intelligent, lots of things.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, that's the way I'm going to be as a philosopher. I went off to Bowling Green State University, and I found that a number of colleagues there were starting to develop courses on applied philosophy,
Mhm.
medical ethics, for example, philosophy and law, business ethics, environmental studies, and so on. And after teaching there for a few years, I realized that in the ethics and existentialism classes I was teaching, frequently students had an interest in things having to do with death and dying.
Mhm.
And I thought there's a new college on campus, a college of health and community services. So they had nursing, they had gerontology, social work, child and family studies, and so on. I thought a course on death and dying would fit. I didn't think of phenomenology and existentialism. I thought of ethical questions and
Nice.
so
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
I got approval for the course, and on the way to offering it for the first time, I thought, most of the time, these students aren't going to be dealing with ethical issues in these work environments they're entering into. They're going to be afraid to go into a room where someone's dying. They're going to
Absolutely.
be just daunted by what must be going on in the lives of these people. They'll feel without anything to say or do. They'll feel like they're intruding, they don't belong, or they just feel overwhelmed by the subject. Um, I'd like to help them be more effective, and I think I can. But I
Nice.
decided I had to sort of set aside formal philosophy, and I became a one-man intersubjective studies um, band, and I
Right.
looked at various things, and I found that a lot of people were teaching by inviting students to do exercises where they reflected on their own experiences.
Wow.
And I came up with this exercise among 15 or so that I did in the course of a term. Uh, Tell me about what you take to be the three most important loss experiences you've had in your life. It doesn't have to be about death and dying, but if it is, that's really the good thing to talk
Yes.
about. But
Sure.
the other losses, you can learn from them too. And I must have read, over a 10-year period, I must have read 1,000 or two of these responses. And nobody mentioned 5 stages of dying. Nobody mentioned one stage of grieving and so on. What they talked about was how hard it was to deal with what was left behind in the closet or in the kitchen.
Yep.
How am I going to talk to grandma? Her son just died, my
Yep.
dad.
Yep.
How am I going to interact with my friends who will ask me about this, that, and the other thing?
Yeah.
What am I going to do with um, family gatherings? How's that going to be reasonable for me? Do I really want to study what I am studying now, given the kind of effects an experience like this is having? Where do I go next? My best advisor just died. Where do I get advice? And
Right.
all of these things added up to me, given the rich variety. I remember one young man wrote a thing about having to take the gun away from his father, who was trying to kill himself in the living room. All right. I mean, the reality was in
Yeah.
these stories. All right.
Oh,
It is much richer reality than people talk about when talking about taking your way through 5 stages.
Yeah.
And I kind of wrote things up a little bit and kind of fed it back to my students. I said, look, taken together, what you've been telling me for these several years now comes to something like, how do I live in a world that's changed so much because dad died or grandma died or my best friend died?
Sure.
How do my daily life is going to be different because a major figure is missing. I don't know quite where I'm going to go in the future without his or her support. It was my best supporter, strongest fan, and so on, and now he's not around.
Right.
So redirecting my life story is what I have to do. Relearning how to live in the world is a combination of having to reshape your daily life and having to redirect your life history. And there are multiple dimensions of all of that, but I came up with the idea and I started writing about it. I was in some professional organizations by then, and the idea was just new.
Yeah.
A lot of them have been talking about 5 stages. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's 5 stages were written about as stages that the dying go through when they're struggling to determine or come to an understanding of whether they're actually dying or not. And there's a lot of uncertainty in those cases. But when someone has died and you have a body that is no longer breathing and talking back, there is no ambiguity about what has happened.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Right.
there's something else you have to do besides
Yes.
going through stages where you use ego defenses. That's what you try to do. An ego defense is either fight or flight, and we're familiar but with how people work their way through difficulties where they have some control and so on. And so you try denying it. Just, can I get away with living without really paying attention to this thing? Do I
Right.
have that much control? That doesn't work because it's in your face.
Right.
Anger. Egos try to control a lot of things through exercising strength and anger, and that doesn't change what's happened. So that doesn't work, or what's happening. I'm either dying or I'm not, and this anger doesn't get me any closer to understanding one way or another. So then bargaining. Is there a way in which I could change what I'm eating or how I'm living? And maybe the doctors say, well, if you do that, you might get an extra year or two.
Correct.
And then it becomes pretty clear that no, you actually are dying and the change in
Right.
diet isn't helping. So then you get into the 4th stage, which is depression, which is roughly, pardon my French, oh shit, my defenses aren't working.
Right.
Got to be another way to deal with this.
Sure.
And you get to acceptance, which means that, yeah, I really am dying. That's how it works in the case. Well, and I've heard people argue, and they work with Kubler-Ross. One of them, David Kessler in particular, wrote a book with her. And they talk about, well, those 5 stages are present in coming to terms with someone's having died too. And when you get to acceptance, grieving is done. No, when you accept the reality that your loved one has died, that's when you start to engage with what's happened. All right.
That is so true.
But this relearning the world is a rich idea, and it's found favor. I'm thought of as a participant, a major participant in a kind of revolution of thinking about grief and loss. And part of it is being shoved through 5 stages or coming down with symptoms to be treated as if there's a syndrome that's like a disease. That's what grief is. Leaves you thinking of your grieving as entirely passive. It happens to you. You go through it. You wait for it to pass, like symptoms eventually go away, and so on. And I wrote an article in about 1990. I said, titled it On the Importance of Conceiving of Grieving as an Active Process.
Mm.
Later, I got a vocabulary that works very nicely. Psychologically, what happens in a lot of experiences is that we are reacting. We cry because we've fallen into sadness. We scream and yell because something is distressing us terribly and we'd like to get control of it. But we're passive as sorrows come over us, suffering comes over us. Those are called reactions.
True.
Simple psychological stuff applied here. The alternative is what we do when we're relearning the world or grieving. We're actively engaged in trying to put that life back together, in trying to redirect where we're going.
Yeah.
And we are responding actively. And for like 30 or 40 years or more, when Freud started talking about grief in like the 1920s, it was all focused on reaction. And in the last 30 years of the 20th century, my thinking, along with that of several others like William Worden and Robert Niemeyer, prominently focused on response. And we really have to take this idea seriously that grief is both suffering that comes over us and how we manage to respond to it in a way that enables us to return to meaningful living, albeit changed.
Right.
So that's how I came to all of this. Is that for the first half hour of your show?
That's great. No, you brought up a lot of terrific points. And if I want to go back and hit some of those things, because I think I'll start first with the passive nature of it. You're right. We sit in grief and we allow it to wash over us, and then our reactions. And many times we really don't know, first of all, who to go to. There, I find as a physician, I always want to create a safe space for people to, come and talk. We have about 15, 20 minutes in a room, and they disappear for a couple of months. And then, where do they go? Who do they talk to? I don't know. I don't know how to tell people to, to react and respond and to get through all of that. Finding somebody that you can align with, that you trust and care, to go deeply on that subject isn't. Many people aren't comfortable to sit with somebody and discuss that. They've been too close to it. They've experienced it themselves and they're too close to it and just can't go there, or they've never been through it at all and just don't know how to respond. But many times it's a very lonely process, just a very lonely process.
Absolutely. I think when I think about who can be a good counselor, it could be your life's companion, your spouse, could be your best friend, could be your minister. It could be someone that you met in a coffee shop and every Saturday you have some time with that person.
Sure.
And they've gotten to know you well, and so on. It could be someone who just surprises you if you open
Sure.
up a little bit and they
Sure.
they do a nice job. But in general, I've found I'm able to think back over my life. I've had a long one, and most people have had half as much or less. But along the way, you learn people that you can trust, that you can talk to. And they don't have to have any professional qualifications if they're good at listening.
Yeah.
And some challenges in relearning the world are kind of ego work. How do I take care of this problem? How do I get someone to fix the sink? He used to do that right now.
Right.
And there's practical stuff that people can give you advice on. And then there's advice about deep cares in your life, love in your life, challenges in relationships in your life. And people who you can talk to about and have had conversations about those things with, who aren't necessarily professionals. I mean, you may have a good minister or rabbi.
Sure.
You may have a Sunday school teacher who's still pretty good, or your best history teacher in junior high. You got so that once a week you would gather with him and a couple of your classmates and talk
Mhm.
about things just because we need to talk about adult things with somebody.
Yeah.
In my situation, there was a young woman who was a classmate, and her mother was a teacher, and there were a bunch of us young boys
Yeah.
who really needed to get together now and
Yeah.
again. And we would get together with this woman's or this girl's mother in their living room, and we talked about everything.
Yeah.
Had someone died right in the middle of those years, I
Yeah.
think I would have approached her. I
Sure.
mean, she listened and understood and offered a little bit of wisdom. I mean, she wasn't an expert on grief and loss, but you don't need it. The expertise you need is on
Is
being empathetic, sympathetic,
the ear.
careful in what you say, and so on. And
Sure.
most people have somebody that they can kind of approach. I'll tell you a little bit of a story of a slightly different situation. I used to have a couple come into my class, and they, along with another couple, founded a mutual support group for parents who had children die. And they couldn't find other people to talk to. They found people who had similar experiences to talk to. That's a part of the story. Um, the couple I'm thinking about suffered the death of their 3-year-old daughter, who fell off the swing in the backyard
Oh,
on Friday, and by Monday she died.
yeah.
And the doctors discovered that she had an incipient brain disease that
Mm,
was provoked into full flourishing by the fall.
mm,
So
mm.
they were bereft. They had a young son who survived with them, and they struggled. And people who didn't know what to do failed to do it really wonderfully. They went to church expecting that the minister would have something soft and lovely to say. He holds out his hand and wants to shake her hand and congratulates her. She now has a daughter in heaven. This she said, if I had the energy, as I think back, I would have took a swing at him and punched
Uh,
him in the face.
Understandably.
You have no understanding of what I'm experiencing. In the first week after their daughter died, the neighbor, who they never talked a lot with one another, but their children played together.
Yeah.
So they had a young daughter. And the woman calls up, sort of out of the blue, and says, look, I heard what happened this last weekend, and you have only my sympathy, and so on. I wanted to approach you. Our daughters spent a lot of time together. I've got photographs. How about you come over? We have coffee and look at the photographs together. She
Wow.
needed that. The world was not talking about her daughter. The woman sensed that the world is not responding very well. I knew your daughter. I loved her like my child's
Wow.
best friend,
Wow.
and so on. Why don't we talk?
Wow.
Now
That is.
that may be out there, who you don't think of as the people to turn to, but some people
Sure.
show up.
Sure.
The world's like that.
It absolutely can be. But I think some people retreat to a place where, do they feel shame? I mean, it's hard to reach out to people like that. Do you feel shame for being sad? You know, I know my my philosophy in my world around the people that I know is, you know, just be tough, you know, get through it. This is life. And, you know, so just get through it. That seems to take a place, and I think that's more of a denial mechanism for for others not wanting to go there? How do you how do you break through that ice with people?
I don't know if this is really the key to breaking through, but there are challenges in life and there are challenges in life.
Right.
And I break them down into two types. Okay. One type is what I would call everyday problems.
Mm-hmm.
And our egos are good at everyday problem solving. So let's call one kind of challenge problems. Problems can be managed, problems can be overcome, problems can be fixed, problems can be controlled, and egos are really good at that.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. And some people sort of live on the surface where they're constantly troubleshooting and problem shooting, and that's what they're used to. And they're trying to accumulate resources that enable them to live more delightfully, more happily, more successfully, and so on. And God, our egos are really good things to have.
Can be.
And if you've ever been in a room full of engineers, it's sort of like a room full of hyper egos. They're ready to tackle anything. I've got cousins. We had a weekend once where late at night people are keeping themselves awake. They just don't know how to go to sleep. And one of them's pacing in the hallway. I'm an electrical engineer. Just ask me a question. I'll help you solve your problem. I'm an electrical engineer. I can handle anything.
Right.
He happened to be a man whose twin had died about 10 years before that.
Oh, yeah.
And he's never really come to terms with it very well because he's
I think we do that.
who knows how to handle problems.
That's right. And I think we all do that to an extent. Absolutely.
Yeah. And then there's another kind of challenge. And I call them in my writings mysteries. Mysteries are with us. They're constants in life. We respond to them in meaningful ways, eventually, most of the time, but later on they show us a different face, and we have to engage with them again and again. And death is like that. And if you want to reflect on the meaning of life, life is a mystery. And if you want to reflect on the meaning of love, love is a mystery.
For sure.
And being small and insignificant, being susceptible to suffering, living in prominently uncertainty, and not having answers that you really wish you had, and let's see, small suffering, and being impermanent. We're susceptible to dying. Okay.
That's right.
These are constants. These are constants in our life. They don't go away. I once gave a talk. I was invited somewhere in the South, and there were several of us, and each of us had a time to talk. I said, in my death and dying classes, over the years, I collected cartoons and quotations and little sayings of one sort or another, bits of poetry, and I took them all together. I was invited to give a last lecture in a dormitory on campus. I took out the shoebox that had all of these things in them, sorted through them, identified those four things I just mentioned, and I put together a talk called Fragile Humanity, Handled with Care. All right. And I said, people can spend a lifetime trying to deny that these things are part of who they are, trying to dismiss them as insignificant, or trying to fight against them as something to be overcome. They will always be what they are. They will always be with you. If you do those things, you will lead a chronically unhappy life, because you are resisting the condition of who you are. Features of your vulnerabilities, front and center, are there. And if you struggle against your vulnerabilities and pretend that you don't have them, you will suffer more. You will be an unhappy person if you reject the humanity that you've been blessed to have. It's a limited life that we all live. All
Wow.
right. So learn how to live with the limits. So learn how to dance with mysteries. When it shows up and your dad dies, it's going to show himself in a certain way. If it shows up when your dog is killed by a car, it shows up in a different way. When your best friend is shot in the Vietnam War and he dies or she dies, you're dealing with death in a different way. These are all aspects of the life that you have, and they show up. And learning skills of responding with your soul and your spirit, not with your ego, to mysteries is something that you are reminded of when someone dies and you taste grief, because all of those things come to the surface again.
Wow.
How's that?
Well, you kind of knocked me on my rear end with that dancing with the mysteries. That's amazing. I would like to actually. Well, you got me. You got me with that one. I want to dig into that just a little bit and maybe give somebody out there kind of some steps on how to do that, because that is the heart and soul of it. I think you just nailed it right there. And then I want you to kind of go over some of the things in the book that would be great for, to entice people to understand they need to look at these books and read. And we need to take a very, very short break. I've got a beautiful set of people who have supported me, Magna Pharmaceuticals. I'm going to let them have their little cut of a commercial here. Would you, though, before we do that, tell people where they can, while I wipe up my face here, where they can find you, reach you, and your book and everything?
I'll do three things. The books, the first one, Seeking Wisdom, is being published by Oxford University Press tomorrow. It's going to be available in hardcover, and it's also going to be available along with my other books at Amazon, and they'll all be clustered together so you can acquaint yourself with others. And I have a website. It's called Grief's Heart, with no punctuation in it, griefsheart.com. And you can find out about my books in detail and my thinking in detail. And I have a website. Oh, not a website. I have an email. If you're going to write me hateful email, just don't bother, but I can take it.
Who would do that?
But I will not be affected by it other than annoyed. tattigca@gmail.com.
Okay. All right.
I'd be happy to hear from you. And if you have a podcast, we could talk too.
Absolutely, please. And great. Okay. Well, that's great. And all that will be on my website at drpbetterlife.com, as well as some of my other shows that we've done. And I love it. So we'll take a very, very short break, come right back, because I want people to hear some of this next information.
Thank you.
Depression, anxiety, low energy, weakness, these are just some symptoms of low B12 levels. And the absorbable B12 folate supplement that's helping people declare victory over depression symptoms is De Novo Plus B12 by Magna Pharmaceuticals. Patients with symptoms of depression often exhibit low levels of folate and vitamin B12. The human body needs sufficient folate intake to produce the essential neurotransmitters serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine. These neurotransmitters alleviate feelings of sadness, anxiety, and gloom. What makes De Novo Plus B12 so successful? De Novo Plus B12 contains readily absorbable folate and B12. That means it's more successful at correcting the root cause of your deficiency, not just the symptoms. Whether you are suffering with low energy, depression, fatigue, or anxiety, you owe it to yourself to learn more at magnaweb.com. That's magnaweb.com. Please let us know at checkout that you heard about De Novo Plus B12 on The Better Life with Dr. Pinkston.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm grateful to have everybody listening in today. We have Thomas Attig on with the it sounds like two books, and I'm sure you have more writings, but Seeking Wisdom in Death's Shadow, and then your self-published book, Catching Your Breath in Grief, which are going to be available on Amazon. And so ATTIG, I want everybody to be able to spell that correctly and find you. We stepped away kind of right in the middle of a very, very emotional topic for me. I think everybody becomes very humanized when it comes to grief and death. There's, like as you said earlier, no escaping it for ourselves, for our loved ones, and that is tough to face. How does somebody, approach? You say dancing with the mysteries of life, not avoiding them. I think we can do that very, very well, whether it be denial or whatever title you want to lay to it. But how do people approach and do that? What is the key? I guess this is a hard question, but what is the key to getting through grief and facing it, but also making something positive out of it? Sorry, that was a rough one.
Well, there are ways in which I think about grief that I think if people think of it this way, then they're going to be more willing to do what's required by a difficult event in their lives. I think that it's incredibly important to appreciate that the loss of the presence, the living presence of someone else that you love is the hardest thing. It's not to be underestimated. It's very weighty and it's global in its significance. That's what I've emphasized already.
Very true.
But I think that when it comes to the suffering and the feelings that we have and so on, we misunderstand them. This is part of what I want to say. We think of them as things that we want to get off of the table, out of the way. They weigh on us. They're heavy, and they kind of stop us in our tracks. And they can feel like they're overwhelming. And a lot of desire in being in grief is to get past these things that are weighing on us.
Yeah.
And a lot of people advise, I think wrongly, that what we need to do with these difficult, weighty feelings is express them and just get them out. Go to the mountaintop and scream them to the skies, or
and it'll go away
magically. Journal.
Yeah.
Or just pour your heart out in somebody's presence. And I think you're a doctor. You watch out for what happens physically in person's bodies. And they're telling you about what's happening with the organs or the systems or the layers of muscle and whatever in a person's body. And you get clues about what this person's body needs to get better. And you specialize in helping them connect with those good things and hope that they work so that they get better, and so on. And we have like an immune system built into us,
right?
Physical immune system. I think of our emotions as like a social emotional immune system, a well-being immune system. And what emotions are doing as they press on you and you avoid them and try to make them go away and they become more prominent and press you harder, they want to be understood. And there are ego emotions where you're feeling helpless and out of control and terrified by what might happen next, and so on. Your ego emotions are saying you got to find somewhere you can have self-control that's proportional to where you are, taking care of the stuff that you still need to, and you need to get over your pretension of being invulnerable and other myths that you're telling yourself in your ego, where you're stronger than you really are, and so on. But you need help. These emotions of helplessness are telling you Find places where you feel less helpless. Find the things that you can still do something about and take care of.
Yeah.
And I would say your soul's emotions. I think of our soul as the stuff that's in us that enables us to care deeply, to love, to make ourselves at home, to make friendships and deeper personal relationships. Um, uh, we talk about soul music and we talk about soul food, and all of this stuff is the stuff of home and the stuff of being together in communities, in friendships, in intimate relationships, in parental relationships and grandparental relationships, and so on. And when your soul is aching, it's telling you you need to connect to someone who cares about you and you care about, and so on. It's telling you what to do.
Yeah.
And your spirit is a thing that delights in joy and adventure and excitement, but
Sure.
it's also into growing and changing and maturing and finding meaning, in spiritual, religious sense, and so on. And when your spirit is down, it's not just down; it's screaming. Pay attention. You need somewhere to find some joy. You need some guidance in overcoming the worst of what you're experiencing and finding hope.
Yes.
Hope is a spiritual thing, and so on. And I think one of the things, the big question you're asking me is, I think, in part responded to by taking your emotions seriously and working with what they're crying out for, helping them find some of that. One of the chapters in the Seeking Wisdom book is called Sorrow-Friendly Practices. And it's about, I think, 13 different things that we can do to support this kind of engagement with what your emotions are telling you. And one of them is a very simple thing, which is find someone to talk to about it.
Right. Sometimes it's easier said than done.
Or participate in rituals, or do some of your own. And there's talk about that in there. Pay attention to your dreams. Your dreams speak to you in profoundly interesting ways. Find a good counselor. It doesn't have to be a professional, but talking the way we're talking, you're going to have some ideas that I don't have. The other person's going to have some ideas. I have some ideas I can try out on you.
Sure.
I had a point in my life where my mother was dying and my first marriage was falling apart. And I've been teaching for a long time, and I'm a pretty capable guy. I'm kind of thoughtful and reflective. In a minute, I just had this idea. This is a big pile of stuff to be dealing with all at once. I'm going to find somebody in the psychology department who can recommend a counselor for me.
Yes.
And going to a counselor was, at that time, probably the best thing I could have done for myself.
Wonderful advice. Yes, thank you.
They're good people. You can do things with prayer. You can do things in turning to faith. You can do things with learning from your dreams. You can work with the arts. You can make art. You can appreciate art. You can read art, and it speaks to you in a different way.
Absolutely.
They're extraordinary experiences. People have experiences of meeting the person who died, or hearing their voice, or looking to the heavens and have a sense that something's speaking to you, and so on. Take those experiences seriously. Don't dismiss them, unless they're telling you you're the creepiest person who ever lived and you should die too. But they don't usually do that.
No, they
take them seriously. And there are people who've written books about collecting them and what people have learned about themselves and their situations. Pay attention to your body. Your body communicates things about your relationships and the significance of your activities and so on. Pay attention. Learn to read your body.
Yes.
And there are others, but that's a sampling of sorrow-friendly practices. Now, what was
Yes.
the question you asked me? How can we help people?
It's a big question, and I didn't mean to corner you on that, because I don't think there's an absolute answer. I think the absolute answer is read your book, right? But and our books, both of them. But it really is about where somebody just, what's the key, I think, to somebody just getting started to work through it, because it
Oh,
takes it.
What's
Takes
the
an
key? I
influence.
have to tell you, if your
Yeah.
audience doesn't hear this, you haven't heard me. Okay. I remember giving a talk, and a colleague I'd known for 10 or 12 years, and I knew that his son had died 4 or 5 years before. And
Yeah.
he's sitting in the audience, and I'm offering this idea for the first time. And I said, people are aware of how much they're hurting. And that's where we started here. And I said that emotions are telling you, giving you some instructions. They want to be heard and understood, and so
Yes.
on. I think there's a way of understanding just the deep sorrow that is built into not having the living presence of this person with you anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that sorrow is not simply telling you that it's really painful to be without this person. I think deeper in the understanding of that sorrow, we want them back. We can't have them back. But what we really want, more than having them back, I think, is we want to continue loving them and feel they are loving us. And I think that's the whole thing. And I think the biggest move in grieving is from loving in presence to loving in separation. And it seems daunting. It seems, oh, well, that's not possible. That's what the absence of their presence is all about.
Absolutely.
No, my other book, there's another book called The Heart of Grief. That's
Okay.
in the search for lasting love. And the heart of it is making that move. And how can we love people in separation? I'll ask you a couple of questions and you'll start to understand it.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
When you came to work today, did you bring everyone who is alive who you love with you? Are they there with you in the studio or in your office?
Of course not.
No. Did you stop loving when you left them? Do you suspect that every time you leave, they stop loving you,
Right.
even
No.
though you're apart? No, of course not. All right. Well, you must be doing a lot of things that amount to loving them when you're apart. What are they? Because you can do those same things after they've died. You can talk about them. You can remember them. You can take lessons from them. You can admire them. You can follow them. If you remember funny things, you can laugh with them again. If you remember sad things, that you can cry with them again and sense that they're still with you. You receive all kinds of lessons in living from the people that you really like, your family, your friends, your teachers, and so on. You have all of those legacies.
Yeah.
The most precious gifts that people give to you when they're present with you, you still have.
Yes.
All right. And
Yes.
what you can do is focus on remembering them, sharing them with others, allowing their legacies to shape who you are. And they're
Yeah.
already shaping who you are.
Yeah.
You're the product of your mothers and fathers raising you. Let's say you had good parents, or mostly good, which is what most people are when they're parents. All right.
Right.
You can look. I've experienced a lot of death in my life.
Yeah.
All right. I mean,
Yeah.
30 aunts and uncles and almost 30 cousins and grandparents and parents and
Sure.
countless friends and colleagues and so on.
Sure.
The best thing I can do when I remember them is work past the sadness. And gotta remember that conversation. Or I think I raised my kids differently because he showed me how to do it.
Sure.
and so on and so on.
And
We've got-
appreciate. Yeah.
We've got practical legacies, we've got soulful legacies, we've got spiritual legacies of the people who have died. And if we can reach past the sorrow of missing their presence and embrace those legacies and live in terms of those legacies or in appreciation of those legacies, we do pretty well. Let me tell you just one more thing. There's a little book by a man named C.S. Lewis, who happened to be a Christian. And he wrote about a book called The Grief Observed, where he sort of describes what he went through a period of several months as he was grieving. And in the early going, he's cursing at his God, thinking he might be a vivisectionist who is tearing me apart. I'm just playing with the people that he created and so on. And by the time he gets to the end of the book, when he's reached past the heaviness of his sorrow and come to embrace his wife's legacies and so on, he says, I've gotten to a point where I can praise him for bringing her into my life, and I can praise her. And that's a better place to be than in that sorrow that I was in. And let me read you just one little thing here. I think that what grief can take you to, if you work hard at it, and
you do have to work hard, stick with it.
You can get to gratitude.
Wow.
And I want to read about gratitude.
Okay.
And this is as good a place to end as any, but here we go. This is here it is. You've got this beautiful bird, right? Can you see the bird?
Right? Yes.
Being, and all the pages are like this.
That's your book. That's your book, isn't it? The Catching Your Breath in Grief. Yes. This is All
right. So I say you breathe most deeply into life when you accept heartache as the price of love. You would not hurt so much had you not been given a unique place in the great web of life, a life to live, soul and spirit with which to live it, and the privilege of loving and being loved by the one you grieve. The pain of missing him or her is an inevitable companion to the joy of his or her sharing life with you. Avoiding love out of fear of sorrow would have cost you all that you miss. And allowing fear to control you as you enter the next chapters of life would cost you all you still have. When you realize your good fortune in having your loved one in your life, an amazing grace assures you that courage, hope, and joy outweigh fear, despair, and sorrow. You live more fully when you are grateful.
Wow.
How you doing?
I'm okay. That is beautiful. It is beautiful. You can tell, obviously, I have an experience, and I'm so sorry. But it's okay to be human and vulnerable, and that's absolutely so beautiful. That is so beautiful. So,
thank you.
That is that's going to be a #1 on the read list for 2026. Thank you for that. I am incredibly grateful. Absolutely beautiful. Wow. Unfortunately, as we hit minute 58 here, this is a beautiful conversation. Thank you, and I think you're extremely wise in your writings and thoughts and advice, and so I really appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So
I'm glad.
A tough goodbye here, but thank you. So I'm going to make sure that all this is on the website so that people can easily reach it. Again, if you're on YouTube, you can see the QR code up in the top. If not, then please tell us where we can find you again one more time before we go.
Well, you can find the books at Amazon or Oxford University Press. Actually, I've published 3 with them, so
beautiful.
They'd be happy to hear from you. And I have a website at griefsheart.com.
Yes.
And I have an email at tattigca at gmail.com.
All right, and I will make sure and list everything so people can find you. You have been incredibly gracious this morning with your time and experience. I appreciate that. Is there any final words that you want to leave us with before we head away?
Being grateful is the best place to get to, and being kind to yourself on the way. Find the people and the things that bring out the best in you and comfort you the most, and
I agree.
go there. That's enough, I think.
Agreed. Thank you so much. Absolutely. So everybody, please visit drpbetterlife.com for all this information and any of my previous shows. I've done this for almost 4 years and I absolutely love it. I've had some great people on and you are at the top of that list. Thank you. And as always, everybody have a great week and please take care of each other out there. We'll see you next time.